Hi, welcome to the Cows Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Burney. A catalyst is defined as a person or thing that precipitates an event. A catalyst is something that it participates in a reaction, but does not get consumed in the reaction. There's a heart behind this podcast for, people with aspirations. There's a heart behind this podcast for motivated people that want to make a difference, that have a bias for action, that really, truly want to be a catalyst in the environment around them, both professionally and personally, in their homes, in their workplace, and beyond. So welcome to this podcast. I really hope you're enjoying the series that we're in. Welcome to this episode, and let's dive right in. As we continue on in this next segment, we're in this discussion with Kathryn and Michael Redman. And what we talked about in the first segment, if you haven't listened to it, go back and check that out real quick. But just continuing that on, we're talking about the importance of the atmosphere and the culture that you're creating as a leader. And specifically, we kind of got down this track of talking about the two of you and earlier in your career having excellent mentors, and you were kind of explaining the value of mentorship and how critical that is to, building and developing successful leadership. But yeah, I just think it's fascinating to think about, how important it is as a leader to be aware, right, of even the smaller things that you do and say as a leader, the things you follow up on. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. We were talking about trust. But yeah, so I think I love the way we ended that first segment. I just wanted to kind of carry that on, and hear a little bit more about your experience. I mean, I know we've talked about, the importance of mentors and then kind of how that played in. Any other thoughts on that, or?
Yeah. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
That's a really important concept.
So
sometimes bad leaders can teach you a lot.
So when we sit around and have those great mentoring moments or those great conversations with other leaders and stuff, whether we're they're farther down the road than we are, or vice versa, or our peers, whatever that looks like, it's those evening conversations that we had dinner together, and then it just kind of all of a sudden you're like, how did it get to be midnight? We were having such a great conversation, and you're just talking real life, and something about it being dark out makes it safer for all of us to share things that we want to talk about. I'm still trying to figure that out in my life, why that's true. A glass of whiskey doesn't hurt. But so often, one of the big lessons we learned, and it happens so often, people throw the baby out with the bathwater. They go, look, this hurt me. This went wrong. This didn't go well. And so anything and everything around that context, I'm just throwing out. And we'll give you a great example. And when we had gotten married, we took a leadership role in an organization, a nonprofit organization in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We were living in the San Francisco Bay Area. We were newlyweds, and in our mid to late 20s, and just life was good. And we took this amazing position and put everything in a truck and moved to Colorado. And
it was a Toyota Tercel. Moving truck. Okay, fair enough.
Moving truck.
Fair enough.
And
I was picturing a pickup.
She's like all ready to correct me on the story. And so this is welcome to my life. Okay. So anyway, we moved out there, and we're there for 3.5 years before we came back to California. And in the midst of it, our senior leader, who was an amazing mentor, had been instrumental in us getting married, and walking us through some counseling and some of that kind of stuff. What happened was he imploded. He was one of the best orators I've ever seen. Like, he was amazing. He was super intelligent, bright, friendly, warm, kind of a Pied Piper kind of guy. And we watched a lot of people grow under his tutelage. Mm-hmm. Well, the short fast forward is we found out that he was a narcissist who had lied about a huge chunk of his life. He was thrown out of the organization. He had certain licenses that were removed from him. He lost his marriage. He lost his relationship with his 4 kids. And in the midst of him not being at home, we took him in and said, you can stay in our basement for a while. And when we came home one weekend, we found out that because one of our doors had been ripped off the hinges, that the police had come in and taken him to the mental hospital because he tried to commit suicide in our basement. This was a man who we loved, who had a huge impact on us, and was as great leaders are, a reference point for us, decisions we've made, our sanity at some level, even our marriage at some point, that like he said we'd be good for each other and we could trust each other.
No. He said I was safe to trust Michael.
Oh yeah.
There was no question that I was safe. None of that. Let's not even pretend.
I'd made a lot of poor decisions early on.
So you can imagine it's like, so if he's the one that was the reference point for seeing this was going to all be okay, should I be like, moving out now? No.
Yeah. So, I tell you this story because it's a really graphic story. We talk about it a little bit in the book, but we don't go into quite that much detail. But here was a guy that literally, the person that replaced him loved us in the beginning, turned out to be another narcissist, and fired us. Here we were with an 18-month-old baby. We were in our first house that we'd purchased. We were without a job. We didn't know what we were going to do. Our family was on the West Coast. And we were devastated because and that guy actually lost his job 2 years later too. It was a horrible environment. It was almost like it's a magnet for these crazies.
Wow.
But
we got out just in time.
We came back to California and that's when the half a bubble out conversation happened. Should we go back to school or should I go back to school? And our friend Bob said, yes. And you're half a bubble out and that's why you should go back. And we all laughed. Ha ha ha. And on my 50th anniversary, my 50th birthday party, Bob was at the party and I got to tell that story and we got to talk about it and really honor him for what he did and how he called things out in us. And even that was pretty amazing, but it took us 3 years, Hunter, 3 years to get to a place with what we call shower peace. And I'll explain shower peace in a moment.
Yeah,
it's
please do.
Yeah. And it was because it took 3 years of choosing all the time to forgive and not throw the baby out with the bathwater, to keep all of the lessons, all of the things that were right, all of the things that he had taught us, the first guy, and all of the places we'd grown, to keep those as opposed to going everything. He was a fake. He was a liar. And so everything he said went out. And one of the biggest mistakes we can make in our careers and our development as human beings, let alone leaders, is to remember and to give grace that people make mistakes. And even when they're huge, and quite frankly, his mistakes were below the waterline.
Way
right?
below.
They destroyed his ship. And we were collateral damage.
Yeah.
And it made our life change in ways that we didn't choose. We had a choice. One of them was, were we going to throw everything that he stood for and everything that he was, everything he taught us, were we just going to throw it out and burn the ships?
Right.
Or were we going to do the hard work with people that were safe, with ourselves, with our God, and sort through all of that crap to go, this is keepable. This is keepable. I'll throw this out. This is keepable. And every once in a while you go back to the pile of the throwouts and you go, you know what? I shouldn't have thrown that one out. I need to keep that one. Until what happened was 3 years later was shower peace.
So shower peace, just as our concept is, and I think most people will relate to this. It's you get in the shower, and there's no place like the shower to begin dialogue with all the things that are irritating you, right, in your head. Sometimes out loud if you have a private shower, and you start having the conversations. You're like, I just wish I would have said this. I just wish I would have said that. I just, and you get that person in front of you, and you just start. They just consume your thoughts, right? So literally, shower peace is the first time you realize, oh my gosh, I'm alone in the shower. I'm actually alone. That's shower peace. Because you're not running it all through your head.
They don't control you anymore. You control you have dominion over your own thoughts. They don't have it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's extremely powerful. And over the years that we've talked about shower peace, we realize how many people don't have it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that goes really through the theme of forgiveness and all that, right? I mean, you think about, when you are not willing to forgive someone, they have no idea, right? It's not holding them back. It's the burden's on your shoulders, not theirs.
Yep.
So yeah, no, man, that's a powerful story. Cool.
Yeah.
We're not talking about business at all yet. I don't know. We're out of time, aren't we?
Yeah. No, I mean, a couple things. So I definitely want to make sure, and we kind of already alluded to it a little bit. I want to hear the story about how the book plays in to your journey. But the other thing I really want to make sure we touch on is in your current day to day. It sounds like maybe small business owners is most of your consulting. Is that accurate?
Small and medium size.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
like our client, with the client we were working with this morning has 1,000 employees and they're spread out all over California, but they're on the larger side of our clients list.
Yeah, I was gonna say that wouldn't qualify as small.
No. Most of them are in the, somewhere between, gosh, we work with folks that are 10 employees. We love some of those small family owned or privately owned companies to companies that are in the 50 to 250 range. And we'd call a lot of those kind of the medium sized companies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they could be a couple of $1 million or they could be a mid 8-figure company. Like one of our clients, it's interesting to watch the different sizes. They have about 200 plus employees and they manage, the other day we were talking $65 million is what they manage.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to work with the variety of clients we have because we get to see what's happening in the smaller companies like we are, because we're a small boutique company, and then how it grows into what we call from 1-level leadership to 2-level, 3-level, and in some cases 4-level leadership, which is rare, but it happens.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think about, as you described that, I think about the smaller companies, right, are going to be more intimate. Whoever's leading that company probably has a really good pulse and can kind of navigate that for the company. And I wonder, in your experience, because I've been in Fortune 500 and now in relatively small, and I'm just fascinated with where is that transition? Not that it's like binary, not that there's some kind of hard line in the sand, but somewhere in there's that transition of, hey, we've got a pretty solid control on this to, hey, we've got to do this at scale. If it's a principle for the organization, if it matters to us, that's a big transition, right? Do you kind of help organizations walk through that, or what does that look like?
Yeah. You want to speak to that, or you want me to?
I mean, we consult that kind of stuff all the time. So like I was asked to be on a call next week, and I don't think Michael knows about this, but I was working with an organization that we have been working with a long time a couple of days ago. And they were like, we really want our people to do this, this, and this. And I said, well, if you want your people to do that, then you need to remind them how doing that connects to the mission and the vision of this organization. Right. Because if you're not regularly reminding them of that and regularly reminding them how what they do matters and helps you fulfill and move forward in your vision, they're not going to see it as a priority. Right. So they did okay, well, you come in from the outside and say that. And I'm like, yes, but I'm also going to be telling you have to be saying it, right? Because from the senior leadership to the middle leadership and on down, if you're not reinforcing the vision, mission, purpose, values that we live into as a culture, as an organization, then that's when things start to get very out of control. Right. Because suddenly people are no longer connected to or even understand like how their role makes a difference, or they don't know enough of what the values are of the organization that they're living into that well, so that they're representing you well. Right, so it's that one of the biggest roles of leadership is to remind regularly, right? To say over and over again, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is why we do it. And this is where we're going. And to say that over and over and over again, which is, in the book, we talk about vision, which is kind of the middle of the circle that we developed on our business model. That is vision connects to everything. Mm-hmm. But people think of it as like, I'm going to create a vision and then I'm going to put it in a drawer and not talk about it. And you're like, no, you have to talk about it.
Yeah. Vision connects with everything. You were talking about scale a minute ago. And with scale, I think one of the things we've been reminded about recently is scale. For a lot of people who haven't scaled or grown a business like they want, there's this kind of lore that exists in business literature. And there's pre-scaling and then there's scaling. And it's like this binary thing. I'm not scaling my company yet. And then I'm going to move into it. And I'm going to, and it's, and then once you get into scale, you never leave scale. Right. And so what happens is really it's a cycle that most people don't understand.
Right.
And most leaders don't understand, partially because we're limited in our experience so often. We haven't been around companies that have gone through this, but it's a cycle that if you're going to draw a line, and we're just on the audio, so I can't even do this on video. Okay. So imagine a line that's coming up on a graph and everything's growing and the business is growing. And then all of a sudden it starts to curve over and it starts to level out a little bit. You start to hit this ceiling, for all of us. It's like sometimes it's 100,000, sometimes it's 500,000, sometimes it's 1 million, sometimes it's 5 or 6 million, sometimes it's 45 to 50 million. I mean, there's these ceilings that companies regularly hit. I mean, the ones that are high 8 figures and they just want to get to 9 figures and get to 100 million, they're wrestling with many of the same principles that somebody trying to go from 6 figures to 7 figures or 7 figures to 8 figures is. And we hit this place where businesses go through phases and they go up and they start to hit the ceiling. And the goal is either you change what you're going to do or it starts to curve over and eventually the company actually plateaus or eventually just starts to curve down and die. And it's then you start to change who you are, how you do things, how you structure things. You're still in the same business, but you've got to reinvent yourself as a company at some level. You got to reinvent yourself as a leader. And then you could see that scoop come out of that plateau and start to go up again. But eventually you're going to hit the same problem. And that cycle, if you can stay in that cycle, that's really, in my opinion, scale. That's what we talk about. And what we've learned is to stay in that cycle and say, okay, we're going to hit that ceiling. We're going to modify and change and grow. We're going to adapt and we're going to grow again. And then we're going to hit that ceiling. And through the life of your career, you should, if things go well, you should be able to hit multiple of those plateaus. That's scaling. Really, the cool thing is that it when you're looking at it, it's really sexy because when you think about the numbers, 95% of businesses fail. Okay. And if you're going to be conservative, let's say 85% of all new businesses fail. And I loved listening to a writer the other day that I listened to, and I can't remember his name. Good to Great.
Jim Collins.
Oh, Jim Collins.
Jim Collins. Thank you. I'm like,
that guy. Oh, that guy.
We quote him immensely in the book. Okay. So I'm listening to him the other day and, he's talking about this whole concept of this growth and this success and everything else. Anyway, that's probably off the point. When you have this, where was I? I got lost in the tone.
I think what you're kind of talking about is the iterations and being able to kind of, as you're and the way, at least where my mind was going as you described that, is there has to be a focus on the talent development and leadership development alongside the sales growth, alongside the other strategy. And some of that has to be a budget line item, depending on the size of the company and what your strategy is. And you know, it can't be one of those things where you reach a certain milestone and then go, oh, now we can put some resources into this. It's like, well, it's too late, you know, if you really wanted to maximize it. So that's where my mind went as you were describing that, is just kind of have that iterative talent bench and just that continuous focus on how are we empowering our people? How are we leading our people? Is it a skills thing? Is it Like, is it hard skills? Is it soft skills? And kind of everything that goes along with that.
No, I agree. You've got to put it. One of the factors that we always talked about, which is a simple principle that I've been thinking about for years with us, is if you don't start something when it's little, then when the thing's big, you're not going to add it in, or it's way harder to add it in. Mm-hmm. So, when you got a little budget, take 1% of your budget and put it towards the development. Mm-hmm. Because when your company is, a much larger company, if it's not in there in the habit, you're spending the money. The money's going somewhere. So if you didn't start, then as the company grows, 1% of your budget, may feel tense, but at a $1 million company or a $10 million company, that 1% is a fairly different amount of money that you can invest in that leadership development of you and your team. And so start early. Get it in the budget. I like what you're saying there.
Thank you for being a part of this journey. Definitely subscribe, like, check out Be a Catalyst on Instagram and on Twitter. Also, don't forget to check out the YouTube channel where you'll find videos in addition to the Catalyst podcast recordings that give a little bit more context around my heart for training, my heart for seeing early to middle managers and first-time leaders really thrive and be a catalyst in the organization that they're in the project that they are after, everything that goes along with that. So thank you for being a part of this. Tune in for the next episode, and remember, be you, be confident, be a catalyst.